How to change the interpolation of a keyframe in the level sequence with C++ in Unreal. Because even though the default interpolation works really well as is, we sometimes need a bit more control over the curves to achieve the effect we want, so let's get to it. But before we start, today's video is going to reuse some code we wrote in the video 30 of the series, so I recommend to go see that one, but if you don't want to, here is the code. So as usual, here I am in a completely empty header file except the one little function we're going to create today, and actually I'm saying little, but it's a pretty big one because I have a lot of input parameters, because instead of creating different functions to modify the values, the interp mode, tangent modes, and the tangents, I just decided to put everything inside the same function, so it's gonna be a little bit faster for us today. So good. We have one big function right here, and we also need one little include right here at the top, the real curves.h, to have access to the rich interp curve mode and also the rich curve tangent mode right here. So to have access to both those enums, we need the real curve.h right here. Good. So let's take a look at the function. We have the set keyframe interpolation in transform track. Today we're going to focus on the transform track, but it's actually going to work on any type of track. It's just that for today, I want to keep it simple, so we're just going to look at one type of track, but you can do that for any type of track. So to do that function, we need to first provide the path of the level sequence we are trying to modify, the actor that is inside the level sequence, the section of the transform track we're trying to modify, and then the channel index of that section that we're trying to modify. And if you don't know what the channel index are in the transform section, it's actually just the value of the transform you're trying to modify. The channel 0 corresponds to the location X, the channel 1 corresponds to the location Y, the channel 3 corresponds to the location Z, same thing for the rotation and the scale. So this is going to be the channel index we're trying to modify, so either location, rotation, or scale. And then we need the information about the frame, so which frame we are going to modify, what's the value we want to apply to the frame, what type of interp mode we want to apply to that keyframe, what type of tangent we want to apply to that keyframe, and then what are the tangents we're going to apply, so the arrive tangent and the leave tangent right here, and then a bit more information for the user as usual. So good. That was for the header file. Now it's time to jump in the CPP, and here we're going to start with the includes as usual. And the first one is going to be the code of the video 30 to be able to retrieve the transform track from the level sequence. So that's going to give us access to the track, and then we also need all those includes to be able to modify that track, and actually the keys that is on top of the track. As usual, we need the level sequence, movie scene, and movie scene section. These are just the basics if we want to modify the level sequence. And then since we're going to work on a transform section today, we're going to need the movie scene 3D transform section, and then we also need the movie scene channel proxy to have access to the channels, and the channels that we want is the movie scene double channel, which is the type of channel that is used by the transform section. So two of them are actually specific to the transform section, but once you have the key, you can do the same exact logic that I'm gonna do today for any type of section, because just changing the values of a key, it's doable from any type of section, not only the transform section, obviously. So anyway, for those includes, we are using the level sequence module, movie scene, and movie scene track. So we're gonna go see in the build.cs file, make sure that they are there. We have the movie scene track right here, the movie scene, and we have the level sequence. So good. My project is going to compile properly. If you don't have those modules, make sure to include it, otherwise it will not compile. Good. Let's go back in the CPP, and we're gonna focus on our little function right here. So good. To set the keyframe interpolation in a transform track, we have to first get the section, the transform section we're going to modify. So this is going to be our little section right here. I'm getting it using the get transform section from actor in level sequence function that we created in the video 30. So for that function, I'm providing in the path, the actor, the section index, and that should return me the section I want to modify. In that section, then I want to have access to the channel that I'm going to modify. So I'm just going to retrieve my channel right here. To get that channel, I'm going to ask my section to get me its channel proxy. And in the channel proxy, you can get any type of channel that you want. And in our case, well, I'm saying any type of channel, but the transform track is only using the movie scene double channel. So I'm going to try to find a movie scene double channel, obviously. And then to identify the channel that we want, we have to provide the index of the channel that we're looking for, and that should give us the channel. If the channel is not valid, well, I cannot find the keys in there because the channel doesn't exist. But the channel should be there if you provided the channel index. That made sense. Good. So now we have a valid section, a valid channel, and now it's time to try to find the key in the channel. And to do that, well, we need to convert the frame that we receive as input into a frame number. And to do that, we need to have access to the amount of ticks there are per frame in the level sequence, because the level sequence works in ticks, not in frames. So we have to calculate the amount of ticks there are per frames to be able to use the frame that we receive as input right here. To access my level sequence, I'm simply going to get the outermost object of my section, because the section is inside the level sequence, and the outermost object of my section is actually going to be the level sequence. So I can simply cast it to a level sequence. That should always give me a level sequence, and then from that level sequence, I can calculate the amount of ticks there are per frame. And once I have that number, I can finally calculate the frame number where the keyframe is. So I have my frame number right here, which is simply converting my frame into ticks by multiplying it by the amount of ticks there are per frame in the level sequence. sequence, and that should give me the frame number. Once I have the frame number, I can finally get my keys from the level sequence, so I'm just gonna scroll down to do that right here. And to get the keys that are inside the level sequence, we have to ask our channel to get all the keys that are between a frame range, and in our case, since we are using the same frame number as start frame and end frame, it should only return us one key, unless you have like a bunch of keys on top of each other, but that should not really happen. So let's just say that it's going to return you one key right here, and it's going to push it inside the key handles variable that I have right here. It's also going to give us all the times of all of our keys, but we don't really care about that. So I'm just going to feed them inside a variable that we're not going to use. So good, now we have the handle of our key and we know how to find the keys that we want to modify, and that means that it's finally time to modify the key. So I'm just going to loop through all the handles that I have right here, and actually I'm saying that we can finally modify the key, but it's not really true. To modify a keyframe, we have to go through its index. I don't know why, but whatever. We have to reconvert the handle into an index to access its data properly. So I'm going to look inside the data of my channel right here, and I'm going to get the index of that handle. So convert the handle of the keyframe into an index, and once I have that index, now I can finally modify the data of that key using all those lines right here. Actually, it's one line per value. It's just that we have a few values to apply, but it's actually pretty straightforward. In the channel, we get access to the data of the channel, and once again, and then we get access to all the values that are inside that data, and in those values you can modify the values that are associated with our keyframe, and then we can finally modify the value that we want to modify. And actually in my case I want to modify the value right here using the value I receive as input. We also want to modify the interp mode using the interp mode I receive as input, and same thing for the tangent mode. So I'm going to modify the value, interp mode and tangent mode of our keyframe. That's good, that's exactly what we wanted to do. The last thing that we have to set is the arrive and leave tangent of our keyframe, but in those cases I'm also going to add a few little checks before applying those data, because I want to replicate the same behavior that we have in the editor. So if the tangent mode is equal to automatic, I don't want to set any tangent. I want to let Unreal control them completely. So I'm just going to set them both to 0, so the arrive tangent equal to 0 and the leave tangent equal to 0. So Unreal is going to control the interpolation by himself the same way he's doing it when we set the keyframe interpolation to automatic in the editor. And then we have the other types of interpolation. So we have the user interpolation right here. So if the tangent mode is equal to user, then we want to use the tangents that we receive as input, obviously because they are controlled by the user. But in the editor, when the keyframe is set as user, Unreal is not actually letting you control both tangent. It's only letting you control one of the tangent, and it's applying it to both the arrive tangent and the leave tangent. So in this case, I'm just going to use the arrive tangent for both the arrive and leave to replicate the same behavior that we have in the editor. If you want to be able to set both tangents independently, you have to set your keyframe to break, which is the type of tangent that lets the user control everything. 100% control on the tangent is given to the user, so then you can override the arrive tangent using the arrive tangent that we receive as input, and the leave tangent using the leave tangent that we receive as input. And that's it. Now we've set everything we wanted to set to our keyframe, and I'm just going to scroll a little bit down because we also need to refresh this section, otherwise nothing will change in the editor. The transform section will be exactly the same as it was before applying all those tangents, so the curve will remain exactly the same as before. So we just have to modify the section, tell the section that it was modified to refresh it, and that's it. Now we're done. We can just let the user know that everything worked properly, and it's time to jump in Unreal to see if it works. And here I am in Unreal, and as you can see, it's a little bit packed with a bunch of information, but it's actually not that complicated. I just have one level right here with one level sequence in there, and inside that level sequence I only have one warrior, and for today we're just going to focus on the location X of our warrior just to keep things a little bit simpler. So here my warrior is just sliding on the X-axis, and here you can see the curves because we're going to modify the interpolation of our keyframe, so we need to see the curves to see the result properly. So that's why right here I'm also displaying the curves editor. So good. And as usual, to modify the interpolation, we're going to use a little user interface that we're going to go through in a second right here. So here I can provide the path of my level sequence, the frame that I'm going to modify, so the frame 75 by default, the value I want to apply to my keyframe, the interpolation I want to apply, the tangent mode I want to apply to my keyframe, and then the values of the tangent, so the arrive tangent and leave tangents. And when I click on the set interpolation button right here, it's going to call our new function that we just created, so the set keyframe interpolation in transform track. I'm providing it the path of my level sequence and my warrior, which is the actor that is inside my level sequence. In this case, I'm going to focus only on the location X of my warrior inside the first section of my transform. So I'm just going to look at the first transform, so the index 0 of my transform section, and the channel 0, which is the location X of my warrior. If you want to control a different channel or section, you can obviously provide the index of those, but in our case, since I want to keep it a little bit simpler, I'm just going to leave it to the index 0 and 0 for both the section and channel for today. And then for the frame number, I'm going to use the spinbox frame. For my frame number, I'm going going to use the spinbox value for my value, obviously. I'm going to convert my interpolation from my spinbox interpolation into an interpolation, so either cubic, linear, or constant, and I'm going to do the same thing for the tangent, so either auto, user, or break, depending on the value that is written in the spinbox. And for the arrive and leave tangent, I'm just going to use the values as is because they are floats, and that works pretty well. So good, that covers pretty much everything in the user interface. Now let's go back right here and we're going to see if it works. So right now the interpolation is linear because you can see this is a little triangle and it's going in a straight line. If I set my interpolation here, the default interpolation using the index 0 of my interpolation, it should set it to cubic, and that's why right here you can see that it's a smoother interpolation. You can see that the wire comes up, slow down, and then reaccelerate. Good, so that works. I'm going to set the interpolation back to, let's say, 1. Now it's back to linear, and then I can also set it to constant if I want to. So it's linear there, and then it's becoming constant, and it's not moving, and then snaps at the end, which we don't see because it's always restarting. So that's for the interpolation. I'm going to set it back to cubic because I want to be able to control the tangent, and we can only control the tangent in cubic mode. And in the tangents now I'm going to change the values to see if it works. Well, it doesn't do anything. So the tangents are not working right now because I'm in auto mode. This is the 0 tangent mode. It's automatic. It's controlled by Unreal. So if I want to use my tangent, I'm going to either have to use the tangent 1, which is user, or 2 for break. So I'm going to set it to 1 right now, and we can see that now my water is interpolating following the tangent that I've written in the arrive tangent right here. I can either set it to higher number, lower number, bigger number, smaller number, and we can see that it changes completely the behavior of my water. So good. But now if I try to change the leave tangent, we can see that it doesn't do anything because I'm in user mode. I'm not in break mode, and in user mode we can only modify the arrive tangent. But now if I set it to break, here we go, we can see that now I can control both tangents. I'm going to set it back to, let's say, a smaller number for the arrive tangent and a bigger number for my leave tangent, and we can see that now my wire is doing is behaving a little bit weirdly, but whatever. If that's what we want, we can do anything we want with the tangent, obviously. And then just to show you that it works to change the value, I'm just going to change my value right here. I can put it to a smaller number, and we can see that my word goes back to the left before going to the right, and same thing, I can put it back to a higher number, and now my word is all the way on the right of the screen and it's out of the field of view of the camera. So anyway, that's how we're changing the value and the interpolation of our keyframe in the level sequence with C++, and that's gonna be it for today's video. So I'm gonna see you in the next one. Bye bye.